All right, looks like we are live. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sasquatch Out of the Shadows Live. I'm your host, as always, Alex Pedikov. Hope everyone's having a great Monday so far. Just want to, as always, remind people to check out previous shows. We are now up to show 26. This is show 26, so there's plenty of other shows to check out. Lots of awesome guests. Last time we had a great time with Kerry Arnold of the Bigfoot Odyssey YouTube channel. Really awesome. Got to hear about his encounters and some of the stories and kind of what Bigfoot Odyssey does. So if you want to check that out, feel free to check out. There's a playlist with all previous episodes. And if you like this kind of content, please share it to people who might be interested and, maybe something they can just put on as a background listening for, while they're working or something, kind of like a podcast. But obviously there's the live elements. So for those that are viewing now, kind of how it goes. So next week, we're actually going to have on Shane Corson of the Olympic Project. He's a Bigfoot researcher from out in Washington. Now, we were supposed to have him on a few weeks ago, back in September, but there was an issue with the wildfires and everything going on in Washington, so we had to postpone. So we're hoping nothing gets in the way for next week, but we'll have to see. So next week should be Shane Corson. Tonight we are going to be actually joined by Tate Hieronymus, who is a filmmaker, a Bigfoot investigator, and a musician, as well as the host of the Bluff Creek Project Podcast. And we'll get into what exactly that is. So Tate has made a short documentary film which features some of the members of the Bluff Creek Project and is narrated by actor Rainn Wilson's wife, Holiday Reinhorn. He's a member of the BFRO and an active member of the Bluff Creek Project. And with the help of the Bluff Creek Project, he was able to obtain an interview with Bob Gimlin, who was one of the two that filmed the Patterson-Gimlin film at the film site in Northern California. A very cool experience. We'll talk to him about that. Tate has had 2 encounters, including a thermal video and another possible encounter. He's actually able to take Rob Lowe's oldest son, Matthew, squatching on a few occasions in Southern California. So that's pretty cool. He's got some other projects going on, and as well as the Bluff Creek Project Podcast. So without further ado, let's get Tate in here. Hey, how you doing, man?
Good as always, usually.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Awesome to have you on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I found out about you through our mutual friend Jeremiah Byron, actually, who I had on a few shows ago talking about all kinds of stuff. And the Bluff Creek Project is familiar to me. One of the first videos on this YouTube channel was actually me interviewing one of the members, Stephen Streifert, at Bigfoot Books in Willow Creek back in 2016. So kind of cool to have you on here. First of all, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, just kind of where you came from and what got you into this subject, more importantly.
Well, I'm originally from Kansas City, Missouri. So I grew up kind of interested, in weird things like aliens and Bigfoot. And it wasn't until I moved to the West Coast. I was actually living in Ensenada, Mexico. And then I was like, oh, we're so close to, California, like the birthplace of Bigfoot, basically. And so we actually ended up moving to California a couple of years later. And shortly after that, planned a trip to go up there and started going up there and getting my toes wet into the whole Bigfoot research, I guess, field, if you will. So that's kind of how I got started in the whole Bigfoot thing. So it's been a crazy, wild journey, and it's been fun too.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that for sure. Having been interested in this weird stuff for a while and getting into it, sort of as a young adult, and it's kind of taken me down some interesting paths. So first of all, what can you tell people what the Bluff excuse me, I can't speak tonight apparently. What
all good.
I was feeling a little weird earlier and I took a power nap, and I don't know, just got back from a camping trip up in the woods of northern Maine this weekend, and I don't know if I was just tired or something, but I'm all over the place. So I probably look like I just woke up, which is true, but let's maybe talk to people about what the Bluff Creek Project is a little bit. Can you tell that to folks that may not know what it is?
Yeah, so the Bluff Creek Project, initially it started for the guys that I work with. The site, after it was been 53 years now, it'll be, give or take. The site kind of overgrown, because back in 1967, a couple of years before that, there was a flood that kind of, wiped out a bunch of trees and everything, so it was really clear in there. And so just over time, it just started growing back, and then the forest just kind of took it over. And so the people kind of lost where it was at. Actually, they couldn't find it, and so Steven Stroifer, helped organize a couple people to go up there and try and find the film site.
Very cool.
And so they were using like maps and photos of the stumps there, and a couple of years went by and they were able to find the site. So that's what initially it was, and then they started putting trail cameras down there to hopefully get pictures, of Bigfoot. That's the ultimate goal. That'd be awesome. But in doing so, they were able to prove there was I want to say an endangered species, the Humboldt martin. They were able to prove that they're still living up there, and I think they got protected now, I believe, because of that. And so, but they got a lot of cool film pictures up there of mountain lions and bears. So we got a lot of trail cameras up in the Bluff Creek area. So that's kind of what we've been doing up there, maintaining the film site and stuff like that.
Yeah, that is really cool. And I've had a chance to see a lot of the videos that Steve showed me, and I used a few of them actually. And if you guys go back to episode 1 of the sort of the mini documentaries that I've done for this YouTube channel, like that are labeled episode 1, whatever, that one's about Bluff Creek Project partially, and it has some of those videos. And that was really cool to know about the pine marten. I didn't know that they actually found the protection. They got protection for it. I know Steve said they found a footage of it, which is really cool because, we talk about cryptozoology. Obviously, we're all in pursuit of this really interesting thing, Bigfoot. It's pretty cool, but there are still little things like that pine marten thought to be extinct, and then it was kind of rediscovered accidentally by people looking for something else. I think that's a really awesome conservation story, if anything.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's super cool. To be honest, you do one thing like you're saying, and you end up helping out another species of animals in the area, which is
Definitely.
super awesome.
Yeah, and if anything, they've proven that it's definitely a viable habitat for all sorts of other animals. Obviously, like you mentioned, mountain lions, bears, lots of critters just kind of roaming around doing their thing, unmolested and on their own turf. So if that can happen, maybe something else is out there, and I guess that's the goal of the group.
I hope so, yeah. We're hoping something's out there. Right.
Now, I got to get this out of the way. So we already have a question about it, but I know I asked this question to you originally because I wasn't sure. So, and I'm sure, and you said it comes up a lot. So
it does.
John Gregory says, is he related to the guy that said he wore the costume for Patty? I think that was the same last name. So for those who don't know, there's a guy named Bob Hieronymus with, I think, the same spelling of your last name or a little bit different.
It's a little bit different, yeah.
Right. So he was one of the people who claimed to be the Patty in the Patterson-Gimlin film. Now, you want to just say, like, you've been asked about it a lot of times, or get that out of the way, I guess.
Yeah, that is the thing I'm asked probably the most by people in the whole Bigfoot community. Is like, are you related to Bob Hieronymus? I'm like, I always laugh. It doesn't bother me, but no, I'm not related to him.
That is funny. That's got to be one of the craziest coincidences.
But okay, so it's not. That is a coincidence. It's funny too. And you know what else is kind of crazy? Bob Gimlin is originally from Missouri.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm from Missouri, and then I'm working with the Bluff Creek guys, and Bob Gimlin helped. Was a part of the whole film up there. And then Bob Hieronymus. So like a bunch of these small coincidences are just. I think it's really hilarious.
Yeah, I think the more you're into this stuff, the more you see there's these really weird coincidences that some people would say are not coincidences, but I mean, what do we know? It's funny. But yeah, so glad we got that out of the way because that was the first thing that came to mind to me. I'm like, is he maybe involved because like his uncle or relative was somehow the guy who claimed to be it? I wasn't sure. So that's why I asked. I said, forgive my ignorance, but are you related to Bob Hieronymus?
No, I get it all the time. It's so funny though.
Yeah, that's wild.
I think Cliff Barrickman asked me that the first time I met him.
I'm sure.
He's like, are you related to Bob Hieronymus? And then Tom Yamarone, one of Bobo and Cliff's good friends, they're like, are you related to Bob? I'm like, no. I think Steven Stroifer asked me that too. Everybody asked me.
I think everyone's going to be asking you that for a while because everyone knows Bob Hieronymus. There's been a lot of people that have claimed to have been in the Patty costume. I think he's the most notable because he tried to emulate the walk in the film. So you just have the coincidence of having a very similar last name.
Exactly. It is funny.
What is the origin of that last name, if you don't mind me asking?
It's Greek.
Okay.
That's the origin. I don't know about his origin.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
It could be Greek too. So.
Right. Well, that's like I said, that's a funny coincidence there.
It is so funny.
So Johnny asked, "Did you check for ticks before you came home?" I didn't. I usually check for ticks when I'm getting out of the woods. It's a little cold in the season now, so luckily there's not as many. But I always do check. Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, so now that we've talked about the Bluff Creek Project, do you want to say what the Bluff Creek Project podcast is?
So the Bluff Creek Project podcast is, I'm kind of interviewing people first that have been associated with the Bluff Creek Project podcast or the Bluff Creek Project in one way or another, and people who've actually been to the film site and everything like that. So related or been to in any form. So that's kind of that's how I picked my guests out like that and stuff. So I'm starting to run out of people who have been up there, but there's a lot of people who have been associated with it. So
yeah,
still going down the list.
Right. Well, so
that's basically the idea.
Gotcha. It's interesting. I mean, just how many people at one point, even whether it's the Bluff Creek Project or not, or just the film itself, all the people that have kind of been involved and I know you did the documentary about the PGF film with Bob Gimlin. Did you, when you went into that, did you come out with anything else interesting that you found out that you maybe didn't know about the film itself or the film site or anything like that?
I pretty much knew a lot to know about the film. I mean, I learned a little bit, like, where Roger was standing when such and such frame was filmed, but
right.
For the most part, I knew pretty much everything because that was the film I grew up watching and, studying pretty much to a T as much as I could. And then being there, knowing the people that know Bob pretty good. And then just, yeah, I wasn't really surprised about anything, but there was some neat facts to learn about like how they found the film site. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. And just for those that, I mean, I'm sure most people watching this are probably aware, but Patterson-Gimlin film, obviously the most famous purported film of a Sasquatch, probably one of the most famous pieces of video in history that's been analyzed almost as much as the JFK assassination Zapruder film. I mean, it's been analyzed and looked over by so many different people over the years. It depicts, what's supposed to be a Sasquatch. And it's iconic because that frame of Patty doing the walk, that's like every Bigfoot picture, drawing, sculpture you see, it's emulating that. So with the Bluff Creek Project, rediscovering the film site, that's a huge feat just because you're able to then say, well, this is where it happened, maybe do further studies, try and see, well, how tall was the thing if you're able to match it up. Now, do you know how much like progress has been made on that, or what if there's further plans to kind of figure out anything with the film, even though we're getting out in years from the actual date when it was filmed?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out like what we know what camera Roger used, but we're trying to figure out what lens he used, because that's still a debatable question of, oh, he used this lens or that lens, and obviously different lenses will give different perspective when you use them. So it could be further away, like the subject could be further away, or the subject could be closer to you. So we're trying to figure out that, and that comes into play with how tall she is, because that could also, play into factor with the lens, how tall Patty could be, So there's still some stuff going down with that, and we're just trying to figure out everything. And they're still going down there filming, and I think they did a little bit, or they're going to try next year, take some more film on the 8mm camera and see what to do and just figure some stuff out. So that's exciting.
Definitely.
Looking forward for that.
Yeah. It's quite something. I mean, the Patty film, the PGF film is just very controversial because obviously a lot of people on both sides are pretty strong about their opinions. A lot more people probably in this community are on the authentic side where they think that it shows a real creature. And then you've got a lot of people on the other side that say, well, the circumstances that led up to it were a little bit sketchy, all this kind of stuff. But then, You have the track evidence and other things that came with the video. I'm not asking you to say if you believe it's real or not, but what are your thoughts about the film itself, having, interviewed Bob in the location and kind of years of work focused around it? What are your thoughts about the film and whether it might fit into one of those two categories?
I'm 99% sure it's real. There's always that 1% of doubt, because you never know. But to be honest, I mean, I've met Bob a couple of times, and he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be lying about that for 50-some years. That's a long time to lie. And not only that, but at first, it was really strenuous on his marriage.
Right.
But from knowing Bob and then being to the film site and everything, it makes it more real to me. And then Bob is a very genuine person, in my opinion. And I've never got like the sense he was lying. And but no, I think the film is authentic for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I lean into that camp, and obviously, we have to talk about there's been all kinds of crazy theories that have been spun off about the film itself that we won't even get into, that are just like so outlandish. But I think it just goes to show it's such a monumental piece of film that, there are people claiming all sorts of things about it. Obviously, we talked about Bob Hieronymus and the people who have claimed to be the ones behind the costume. I mean, for me, one of the things that kind of, I guess, tilts me a little bit more into the authentic direction is the fact that even after all these years, nobody's been able to really replicate it to a T. And that's one of the things, like at the time, with the designer of the Planet of the Apes costumes and that sort of stuff, said they couldn't do it at that time period. So I thought, well, maybe if it was 2018, you'd be able to create something exactly like that. But I don't know if nobody has tried. I know they tried a couple decades ago for Discovery, and it looked like absolutely nothing like it. But what do you think
this
about
is
that?
Terrible. No, I totally agree. If it's so fake, how come they can't recreate the suit?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that they can't recreate it. I mean, people now have the technology more so available to them that they didn't have back then. And not only that, why would you fake a female too? I mean, go the extra distance and let's make it a female.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I mean, so in the footage, it purports to show breasts on the animal, which is a very interesting detail. I don't think most people in general, even to this day, still think of the one Bigfoot. There's one lone Bigfoot. It's like a unicorn mythical creature just roaming around. So why would you go? And, they assume it would probably be male. So why would you create a female one? I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
People obviously have strong feelings about it. And, some of the comments kind of address that. So like Critter Hunter says, thus the Patty film is the only one after all these years that looks real to me. And Bob seems like an honest guy, as you've said. I mean, having met him, the lead up to the story also lends itself authenticity. New logging roads cut into a remote, vast area. By the way, did you know later they trailed the tracks and found where it stood for a while up high and watched? That is interesting. So, yeah, let's talk about that maybe a little bit. So there's not just the film. There's actually Patterson, or there are tracks from that encounter. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, so in the interview that I have with Bob, he talks about the full interview is not public. There's only like maybe a minute and a half. But in the interview, Bob Gimlin talks about them finding the tracks, and then they actually were back in the truck sleeping, and it started to rain. So Bob went back to the tracks and covered it with bark. Yeah. And I think later they casted them and stuff. I can't remember who went back and casted it, but I know they got cast of them. And then where Patty said was reportedly went up to watch them doing that, looking all around. Renee DeHinden took an overview picture of the film site from where Patty was possibly standing, watching them. And so that's a really cool photo. This is live, so I got a cast replica of Patty.
Yeah, do you want to? I'm gonna grab mine. So I've never done this show. I gotta grab mine. So you grab yours. So we'll do that. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. So I don't think I've ever shown this on this channel, or maybe I have, but this is a replica of the Patterson-Gimlin film site, 10-2067 Bluff Creek.
Yep.
that I have. And now this one, it was broken in half, unfortunately, but my friend got this from a guy in the Pacific Northwest in the 90s. He says that this is a cast of an original cast. So this would be a second generation. So I'll hold this up for folks to see again. So this is one of the casts, and you have one of them as well.
Yeah, I got this one from Cliff. I bought this one from Cliff. I don't know what generation it is, but it's still a really good one. I had Bob sign it too.
Oh, that's really neat. Yeah, so for me, the footprint evidence too, I think is really interesting because it's not like you just have the video. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, as I said, there's the footprint evidence too. And it's just, they went through a lot of trouble if they were doing that. Now, one of the things that people like to bring up, I think one of the comments even saying, wasn't Patterson a con man or something like that. There's been a lot of stuff kind of leveled his way, and he did write a book about Bigfoot, and he was sort of into looking for Bigfoot, and he happened to get this video. What do you think about that, and where does that factor into everything?
I think it is interesting that, despite that he's kind of sketchy, shady guy, from just what, kind of being a con man, if you will. It is interesting that, like, you got Jerry Crew that casted the first track. Then you got, like, people like Tom Slick doing an expedition for months on end up in the Bluff Creek area, not having anything really. And then Roger Patterson strolls in and gets the iconic Holy Grail film of Bigfoot, if you will. That's the 1% I'm kind of like, well, I don't know. It is weird. Right. It is weird that everybody has never had like a picture or anything, and he comes in and gets like the best video ever.
Right.
So it's kind of a gray area right there, I'm guessing. But
yeah, me too. I mean, I think it almost seems like, I don't know, that has to be brought up because I think people oftentimes, they'll maybe put a detail like that to the side because it may take away from the credibility, but it's important to address that and talk about it. And it's just part of the story. I mean, either they got really, really lucky or they kind of knew what they were doing, or it's probably one of the greatest hoaxes of all time, which, it would be just very interesting either way, I think. But I'm of the camp that whether the footage is real or not, and despite my personal feelings about it or whatever other people may say if it's real or not, I don't think that really changes anything unless you guys at the Bluff Creek Project are able to replicate it completely to a T and say, well, this was well out of the human range or well within the human range. I don't think there's going to be much that will, like, this footage is not going to prove whether or not Bigfoot Sasquatch exists at the end of the day. In my view, I think there's going to have to be further evidence that will prove that. And obviously that's kind of where we've been stuck for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, even if the footage was proven real, like you said, we're going to need more than just a picture or a foot sample, or, I mean, definitely you'd probably need like a body, to be for sure.
Right.
Because there's dozens of hair samples that come back inconclusive.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't prove that it's real or not, So the only way that it will be proven real is a body.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus for the most part. And obviously, a lot of people have qualms about that. They're not sure that kill or no kill, that sort of whole debate. We won't get into that, but it's just the footage is either way. It doesn't matter. I mean, it is so iconic because, like I said even earlier, almost every image of Bigfoot that you can think of, it has that iconic walk. Or when people who are into the subject, they maybe know about the PGF film and they pretend to do like a funny walk. That's just how culturally significant that picture is. Now, Rock Kite Man says all those people in the costume must have been awfully crowded. That's in reference to all the people who have claimed to have been in there. And then I'll read this from Bomber. It says they took the Patty video to Disney. At the time, they had the best costume people and modern capabilities for props and costumes. Allegedly, Disney said they can't recreate it as it is real. Disney didn't have the capabilities to recreate it. The best costume people in the world. So yeah, that's another interesting thing, the special effects. And you think about now, I mean, Lord of the Rings, all these different films, like the incredible costumes that if you were to show that footage to people maybe 200 years ago, they'd think it's real. They're not aware of this kind of stuff. So that is interesting, as we said earlier, how no one's been able to recreate it.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I think the guy that did the costume work for Planet of the Apes said he did Well, there was a rumor that he made it, and then he denied that he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of interesting because if that's a really good, costume, who would not want to take credit for that?
Yeah, right. And now somebody, Critter Hunter says it totally looks real to me because of the muscles and such. But the only thing that bothers me in the video, you can see, looks like a line at the lower back from the body, the pullover top. Now, what's interesting is, I mean, the video itself there's been so many generations and copies of it done that can add artifacts and things that get copied onto during the translation process or the transfer process. They can create almost things that look like muscles or whatever. Have you ever had a chance to look at the one of the original film reels or anything like that? I don't know how much of that is out there.
I think there's like maybe one or a couple pictures out there that Bill Munns had made and released. But that zipper thing is pretty interesting. That Rowdy Kelly, one of the Bluff Creek members, he thinks it's the hackle instead of a zipper, and the hackle is raised like on a dog, when like a dog or I guess mainly dogs would do it. They would get like I guess frightened or territorial-ish, their hackle raises up. So that's probably what they're seeing too, is the hackle raises in there. And
yeah.
I don't think some people say, "Oh, it's a zipper." So, if it's the real deal, that's probably a hackle, not a zipper.
Right. Yeah, and I think somebody else mentioned, I don't think they're muscles but pads under the suit moving. And then he also says, I think Patterson put one over old Bob. Now that's another one of the theories that's been brought up, is that, oh well, Bob wasn't a part of the hoax.
Like Patterson tricked him.
Yeah, but what I found interesting was, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he have a rifle at the time while they were on horseback? So, I mean, wouldn't that be a very dangerous thing to try?
Yeah, Bob Gimlin had a rifle with him. So, and that's the other thing. How would you hoax Bob Gimlin? How would Roger hoax him if they're there the whole time together?
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible, because it very well could be, but it just makes me wonder, because they were together the whole time there for a few days riding horseback.
Right.
So
I mean, like I think what I said earlier was kind of, it would be an extraordinary hoax, really huge, to all those things fitting. And from what my understanding, there are two cowboys, and nothing against, them, but I don't think they were exactly technical experts in costume design and that sort of stuff and logistics. I can only imagine. They're kind of camping out on horseback for a few days. So I think that would be quite a feat to pull off.
Mm-hmm. And like you're saying, Bob had a gun. I don't know if I'd be one of pranking somebody that has a pretty big rifle. I don't want to take that chance of getting shot at.
Yeah, especially in a wilderness area like Northern California, you have animals out there that, if given the chance, would probably try to kill you. I mean, mountain lions, and certainly, I don't know if brown bear were still around at that time, but definitely lots of stuff out there that, good use for the rifle.
Yeah, I know when I go out there, I always carry every time. I always take bear spray, and I'm carrying a gun and a knife too. I just want to have everything covered, all my bases covered.
Oh, I'm the same way. Whenever I'm out in the woods, I always say, I'd rather have it and not need it than be in a situation where I don't have anything and I'm defenseless. That's just my general philosophy. A lot of people who spend time in the woods can understand that, being around all sorts of wild animals and everything. So it really interesting. Now, again, the Bluff Creek Project is involved in trying to preserve that film site. And I've seen pictures. I think they've put up signs to say like the Bluff Creek Project. So you can actually go and hike there, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, you can. I think there's directions on our website too, if you go to that, and it'll tell you how to get to the film site. You can always contact one of the Bluff Creek members, and we'll give you directions on how to get there. So it's it's accessible. But the gates up there close around October.
Right, with the snowfall, I imagine they get a lot of snow.
So they're gonna be closing soon. So next year would be the time to go for sure. Anyone planning or wanting to go there.
Is it a pretty strenuous hike, or how what's it like? I mean, if you're a fit person, probably not too bad, right?
Yeah, if you're a fit person, not too bad. My suggestion is just go prepared.
Yeah, right.
Because part of you're hiking downhill, probably a mile,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's up a creek, and you're going through the water and then under trees and stuff sometimes. Because there's a bunch of from the snowfall, trees will fall over all the time, and then coming back up the same way is pretty hard. But just make sure you don't have like any terrible health conditions.
Yeah.
When you plan to go down there, because it's not easy sometimes.
Yeah. So it's definitely like a deep wilderness hike then.
Yeah, just definitely be careful. Go prepared.
Yeah. See, when I was there in 2016, I didn't have time to hike to the film site, unfortunately, which is a big regret of mine. But we did drive up from Willow Creek to the area where there's the Bluff Creek boat launch, I think, on the river there. And we were there in maybe April or so. And what struck me was how like dry and arid the area looked. Now, is it like more lush once you start getting up deeper into the mountain, or what is the terrain there in general like?
Yeah, it seems kind of dry by the river, I think it would be the Klamath River, right?
Yes, yeah.
Runs up to 96. It's a little dry and rocky there, but yeah, when you get further back in there, it's a little more. It's still dry in the summer, but it's more lush and green for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, just having seen that and then looking at the pictures online, it looks like a completely different area. But what people don't realize too is that it's about almost an hour from Willow Creek. It's not just right outside of town. It's a drive up the highway, and you're right next to the reservations there with the Hoopa tribe and I think the Yurok people, if I'm not mistaken. I spent a little bit of time in the redwoods, which are like 2 hours through the coast, but because of the geographic location of Willow Creek, you got to drive kind of through the mountains to get to it. So it's a little bit out of the way, so to speak, when you're on the California coast.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's off the main highway. It's probably another 40 minutes from the main highway itself.
Yeah.
But you can, for the most part, you can drive most of the whole way there. I mean, it's probably like maybe 1.5 miles ish or less for just of a hike one way. I mean, it's not terrible, but
right. Definitely want to get out there sometime. So if you're heading out there at some point, maybe we'll have to do an expedition or something. I'd love to camp in that area, and just as a nature lover myself, I'm sure you appreciate being out there in the woods too. So
next year, July.
That would be awesome. We'll have to see what we can do. But Stefan says, how big is the footprint? So do you know the exact measurements of the cast? Because I'm not sure. I
had a ruler in here, I thought.
It's pretty big, though. I mean,
I don't know. It's
not as big as some of the casts out there, but it's definitely.
Okay, well, this one, maybe 1.5 feet, maybe?
Yeah.
Or less? Give or take?
13, 14-inch range. If anybody knows the correct answer of one of the Patterson Gimlin Patty footprints, please throw it in the comments, because obviously I'm not informed.
I'm going to say 13 or 14 inches.
Yeah. So it's outside of the human, for the most part, human range.
But this other one, you can tell is way bigger.
Yeah, right. Wow.
That's probably like 16 inches.
And they made a lot of casts when they found those tracks, right? Because I've seen in, I think, Dr. Meldrum's databases and Cliff's stuff that there are, there's multiple prints because there was different ways the foot walked and whatnot. There's somewhere you can see like the mid-tarsal break a little clearer, which I think is really interesting. Again, going all that trouble to create very interesting anatomical footprints on top of a suit that's never been replicated. Interesting, makes you wonder.
Exactly. I think a costume would be a little more, it wouldn't be as neat, even if it wasn't a perfect print or different. The way the foot interacts with the ground, I don't think a costume would make a good track like that where you see all the toes. Because if it's rubber, I don't know. I'm just kind of just talking out loud about it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, it's like, if it was done, I would almost imagine you'd get the footage with a costume and then do the footprint separately, because doing that all while filming it just seems a little difficult, especially because we're talking about 1967. If this was 2020 or this decade, that's a different story. I'm sure you might be able to pull something off of that nature, but maybe with a lot more planning, but just
and not to mention because if you've ever been there, you're kind of walking on the same soils back then. I mean, it's covered with some foliage, like some leaves and stuff here and there. But that's the thing Roger and Bob were saying they were doing. They would like jump off stuff, like off stumps, and try and land and get the impression as deep as they could. And they couldn't even come close. And it looks soft, but it's really not. It's not that easy to get your foot that deep. And so, again, something like Patty has to have a significant amount of weight to get that foot impression deep enough where you can cast it and have a good cast like the ones you and I have.
Right.
There people are seeing, because that's pretty deep right there.
Right.
So that's another thing.
Yeah, it's so many interesting things about this footage. Now, here's just an interesting question. Why not try an older camera to sidestep the supposed electronic interference from Bigfoot? So a lot of people say that, well, because there's trail cameras give off, like a lot of animals know that they're there. Maybe these creatures might be aware. Any thoughts about that?
I'm kind of like on the, I don't really think that you can interfere with our camera technology, because then I'm more like on the flesh and blood side of the fence on Bigfoot, where there's nothing really supernatural about them. Because then you're getting to like they can travel through portals, they can shapeshift.
Yeah, right.
And then that does with more like technology stuff where they can interfere with technology, mind speak. So in my opinion, I don't think so. I just think it's just one of those times when your camera messes up at the worst time. It's like, I can relate to this way. When you like see a celebrity and you're trying to get a picture with them, you're like, your phone's messing up at that worst possible time when it never would. So I don't know. It's just being in the moment, something messes up because you're trying to hurry fast and do something. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, I think using an older camera, I would say. I mean, I don't know. Trail cameras are pretty recent for the most part. We're talking like the last 20, 30 years, maybe. I don't think 56 years ago they had as efficient of technology for doing trail cameras, right? So I think the whole idea about using trail cameras now is that you program it. You can even get things where it sends you an email when there's been a photo or whatever. It's got a signal. But what I will say is that I think that animals do know when trail cameras are there for the most part.
Yeah.
A lot of times they notice, because it's like one of those things. If you were to suddenly have a tree just in the middle of your room, or like a stump, or your house, you'd probably be like, that doesn't belong here,
Like, I don't remember putting that tree in here.
Right. So I think most animals are aware, but I don't think that should really interfere with their behavior for the most. We've all seen those videos of bears coming up and sniffing the cameras or whatever, and there's a lot of stories of interference where trail cameras have been knocked over, or again, you don't know how that happened because you didn't see what happened. So that's a tough one to figure out. But
like you said, animals are, we go there as humans. I mean, we kind of know the wilderness, but at the same time, animals are there 24/7, so they kind of know when things are out of place. And if something as intelligent as a Bigfoot, they'll definitely notice something out of place,
right?
Especially if humans are walking in there. So I think they're smart enough to avoid them. They could probably they could see them, I'm sure, and I'm just going to be smart enough to avoid that.
Right. Now, that's definitely an interesting point. Now, Stefan also says, if Patterson's video is the most significant Bigfoot video image, what would be the second most significant? Yeah, interesting question. Any thoughts?
Oh, God, there is a lot of them.
Definitely. One of the commenters already stole mine, but
there's the Paul Freeman one.
Yep, that's the one. Yeah. This guy said I'd say the Paul Freeman footage is second best. I would agree.
Yeah, I was going to say Paul Freeman. There's also debates on whether that's fake or not.
Yeah, of course.
It looks real to me. Whether it's fake or real, just like the PG film.
Yeah.
I still think it's the second best in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah, that's the first one that came to mind. I think there's a couple thermal supposed videos out there too.
The Stacey Brown thermal is pretty good. That one's probably the best thermal I've seen.
Right. There's a bunch of those. Definitely. I think thermals are the way to go at this point. Just really interesting. And having played with a FLIR for a couple months now myself, definitely really interesting to see if there's anything out there. But so you talk about, or at least you told me that you've had 2 encounters or something like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
My first, well, my first, I'm 90% sure it was something Bigfoot related. Because it was my first time to Bluff Creek. We were in Louse Camp, which is like a few miles. That's where everybody pretty much goes to camp, going to the film site, little camp there in Louse. It was my first time there, and we get there. It's probably like maybe 12 o'clock at night, and we're unloading the car, and I'm pretty sure I was hearing whoops off in the distance up on the ridges up there, and it was freaking me out because I've admitted on my podcast before I'm not very confident in the dark. I mean, when you're not used to going out, definitely, and not out there all the time, it's not your natural environment, so it puts you a little on edge. So it was freaking me out a little bit. And then something later on came up from where the creek was, and I could see it walking, and it was like skinny looking. The shadow was skinny, then the shadow turned and got really wide, then turned back and went the same way. Wow. And shadows don't really do that. They don't go back the same way they came, and they don't really. I mean, shadows get wide, but it just was weird. And then I had my audio recording on my phone going the whole night, and I got some interesting audio. It's really faint, so that was really exciting when I got back home and listened to all of that. And I think it was something definitely happened, and it was interesting to say the least. So I'm 90% sure it was Bigfoot coming in and checking us out. Maybe.
Wow, that's interesting.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's tough in those situations. I mean, it's like you have something like that happen, you can't explain. I don't know. Once you exhaust the other possibilities, that's when the things start to get interesting, because either it was or it wasn't. I mean, you don't have a lot of possibilities once, like I said, everything else is out of the way.
Exactly, and we didn't see anybody in there at all. There was nobody. We were the only ones there. People came the next day, but I'm always thinking, like, why would people want to prank somebody? Because you never know these days who has a gun.
Yeah, right.
And when people are in a tent, you can't really see them because sometimes they'll have like everything covered up over the tent. Like, you could be pranking somebody and then get shot. That's kind of sketchy.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's what I tell people too. I mean, some of the stuff I've had happen in New Hampshire, we've had weird noises around our tent all night and knocks and that kind of stuff on the recorder. And people said, well, it was probably just somebody messing with you. And I'm like, I mean, it's possible entirely, but they have to realize that people, when they're out in the woods, most people are probably armed. They're probably feeling a little more vulnerable, especially when there's things going on in the dark they can't really explain. So not a smart move. And we've seen some of the stuff, like that guy who, I think in Montana or something, got hit and killed by a driver dressed in a Bigfoot costume.
Yeah, I read about that.
That kind of stuff just doesn't seem like a good idea.
No, and that kind of goes with my other encounter too. We went out there. I actually met Matt Moneymaker. I found a track and tweeted him about it. And he actually met me and a couple other people had encounters in the same area. This was in Southern California, just a couple hours outside of LA. So we went. He was like, it was at the end of the day. I was like, so where should we go around here? He said, just take this road all the way to this little trailhead and then just camp there. And then you can go around at night and do stuff. So me and a friend went out there, and we were just kind of hanging around, setting up camp and everything. And we eventually started walking down this trail, maybe like a couple-minute walk from our car. And I do a knock. The sound didn't travel, so I was like, okay, I'll try it again. Maybe I can get a better spot on the tree and try it again. Didn't carry at all. So I was like, okay, I'll just do a whoop. And I did a whoop. And like maybe 30 seconds went by, then I heard a return whoop back. And I was like, dude, I was talking with my friend that was with me. I was like, did you hear that? He's like, no. So we walked back, and I saw this like little ridge where we could probably go up and look around. And we were seeing what looked like city lights, like way off in the background. But we were looking at it more and more, and it wasn't city lights. We had our headlamps on, which is, it's kind of a no-no if you're with people, especially like Cliff. He doesn't like having flashlights on at all. So we had our headlights on, and we could see two eyes, and we thought it was like 50 yards away. And I had a FLIR I have the FLIR Scout T10. I was using that. And if you're new to using FLIRs, sometimes you may not see anything at all. And I was brand new to it, so I couldn't see anything. So I was trusting on him, because he was still seeing it with the headlamp, because I'm the only one with the FLIR. And he said, dude, it was gone. So, after that, I left. And I looked at the footage later, and I saw it on the footage. I was like, dude, that is it. And it stands up straight in the footage.
Oh, man.
And right when it stands up, I'm sure that's when my friend said it was leaving, because he said he couldn't see the eyes anymore. And I think it's when it stood up to walk down the hill again.
Wow.
And then we left. And I should have not listened. I should have just kept recording.
Oh, man.
So
it's so tough in those moments.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know if people have ever been in that moment before. To be in that moment, I wasn't expecting anything to happen. So I was freaking out. And I was excited at the same time, and not knowing what's going on either. So my body's pumping adrenaline.
Yeah.
And so, in that moment, you're kind of like, I don't know what to do. It's just, so I don't blame any people for making mistakes in the moment, because it happens for sure.
I think there's a lot of criticism that gets thrown at people who are out in the woods, but not a lot of people will go out in the woods at night. I mean, that alone is terrifying for a lot of people. I think even just some of the comments, people are saying, like my friend Stefan here, I'm scared of noises at night when I'm in the middle of the woods. Now, I've taken him out to a spot where there's activity, and we had some knocks and stuff happening, and he was like, I want to get out of here. He was like, I'm not really comfortable with this. And, most people, they don't go out in the woods at night. And Yankee here says, I wouldn't be out in the woods at midnight. No way. Yeah, so a lot of people just wouldn't do that.
No, but, that's funny you say that, your friend. Because my friend, I didn't know this until a few months later. He's actually skeptical.
Right.
And I'm not. I'm like I said, when you're not used to being in the dark, you're very uneasy. I mean,
definitely.
I do it to myself to get used to it, even though I hate it. But it's funny because we were setting up our camp before we went to go look around, and that happened. I was like, dude, I'm kind of just getting freaked out. Let's go to where there's people, because there's people all over the mountain hunting. That was another big thing. There were so many deer and hunters out. Yeah. So I don't think anybody would be pranking us, because we could have had, again, with the whole prank and guns thing. But going back to me being freaked out, I was like, I want to go to where there's people. Yeah. And then my friend's like, dude, you're just overreacting. You're fine. And after that encounter, you know what he said? He was like, I wouldn't mind a change of scenery. So we packed up it was like a little tent. We just packed it up and went to where there's people and camped down there. And we went back up there the next day and looked around. But man, just in my house at midnight, in my house, I get freaked out sometimes. I'm like, what was that?
Yeah, it's definitely, the woods at night I always tell people, if you think we have complete control over the world, humans often ask, we act so, pompous and everything. We own everything. We run the show. Take some city folk, or take just people in general, put them in the woods at night. Just be like, have fun, no lights. See how far they make it. That's the stuff of nightmares for some people, for sure.
Yeah, and even with night vision or FLIR, it's still a little intimidating. Yeah, you can see a lot more, but it's still dark around you.
Yeah. There's a lot of people begging for the morning light to show up. But we're getting a question saying, so is Tate still with the Olympic Project, or no? Were you part of the Olympic Project?
No, I'm not, but it would be, I would like to maybe see if I can do anything with them.
Seems really cool.
It'd be cool. I'm only with the Bluff Creek Project. So the Bluff Creek Project is in Northern California.
Yeah.
They do the whole thing with the Patterson Gimlin film site. And the Olympic Project is Washington.
Yeah, they're in the Olympic Peninsula. And we're actually going to have Shane Corson, who's part of it, on next show. So we'll talk about the Olympic Project next week. But yeah, it's so here's another question actually from Eric P. Says, does Tate have any interest in other Bigfoot creeks like Boggy Creek in Arkansas or Brushy Creek in Texas? I don't know why creeks in specific, but yeah. That's funny, actually. A lot of Bigfoots with creeks involved. Yeah.
No, that's so true. Yeah, I'm always talking about Bluff Creek. That was funny. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, it was on Jeremiah Byron. he had Seth Breedlove, and I asked like, "What do you think of my film?" And Seth Breedlove was like, "Tate's always going back to Bluff Creek." Yeah, it's just a place I like a lot. But no, I would love to go to Falk, Arkansas, the Legend of Boggy Creek. That's definitely on my bucket list. And then the Appalachian Trail is a huge one I want to go check out over.
Oh, nice.
I just want to go see all these cool spots and stuff. And
yeah.
maybe Ape Canyon area. That would be really cool to see.
Now, you mentioned you're in Florida now currently, right?
I'm in Florida now. I'm all the way at the bottom of Florida, basically. So I have to drive super far to go anywhere squatching.
That's what I was going to ask, if you had any interest in the skunk ape or anything like that.
I do. Definitely. I mean, it's still Bigfoot. I'm sure.
Yeah, right.
It's just humid here, so it probably sweats a lot. So it's really smelly. That's probably why they call it the skunk ape.
Right. Can only imagine living in an environment like that. And you definitely, Florida's another one of those places where if you're out in the woods, the palmettos, everything, you definitely should be packing some heat, as they say. You've got gators and all kinds of stuff in the south, and
there's hogs and stuff too there.
Oh, hogs are the worst. And Bomber says it's better to have a gun and need it than not have a gun and not need it. Ricky from Trailer Park Boys. Yeah, so it's a good quote.
It's so true, though. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather go prepared than unprepared.
So Guy 15 says, can you tell us about the nests or structures found that the primatologist said were similar to primate nests? That is some of the best evidence, in my opinion. So are you aware about those nests? I know the Olympic Project has done stuff about that. So again, we can talk about that next week. But anything in Bluff Creek area that you're aware of?
There was some guys that we met a couple years ago. We all went to go see some nests. It didn't really turn out. There wasn't nothing down there, but they said it was for, they found them a long time ago. So, my personal opinion, I think it's possible they do stuff like that. Yeah. But that's all I can say really. Cause I don't want to say something and be ignorant about, nothing I know.
Right. Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about that. And next week, Shane Corson, like I said, Olympic Project, definitely we'll talk about that because they have done stuff on that. Now, we have a question from another Tate, actually. Tate Ford says, hey, Tate, love the name, by the way. Do you personally believe that Sasquatch is an animal, or do you think it is something paranormal? You kind of answered this earlier, but if you want to say a little bit more about that.
No, I think it's definitely just animal. I don't think it's anything paranormal. Because like any of the experiences I had were never weird, paranormal-ish or anything like that. Never experienced anything weird out in the field before. So, in my opinion, I think they're just, natural animal like a mountain lion or a bear would be. They're definitely intelligent, but that's about it. That's where I stand on the fence of believing in Bigfoot, really.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. There's obviously a lot of theories, and it's contentious sometimes between the two camps, multiple camps, whatever you want to call it. But I think we still don't really know what's going on out there. I'm not saying one way or other what it is, but I probably lean more on that flesh and blood with maybe some extraordinary abilities that we just can't even understand yet. Mm-hmm. And then we talk about stuff like infrasound and other abilities that are natural that, if you were to talk to somebody 100 years ago about it, they would say, well, that's magical or that's paranormal. But it actually are behaviors that just we can't comprehend or understand.
Well, like lions can do infrasound, or lions and elephants, and that's how they communicate long distance, because that can travel a long way. Right. But also as a way to instill fear and prey. And so I think bears could probably do it.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's a fact or not. I think they could. It just seems like they would be able to. And so I think Bigfoots could do it too.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think it's one of those areas that we just don't know a whole lot about. We're finding out more and more animals that have the ability to do it or use it or utilize it beyond even just predators. I mean, elephants and all kinds of creatures that can use it. Like you said, communicating miles and miles. I mean, that's like if humans had a Wi-Fi signal in their head and they could just beam it to a friend in the next town, be like, hey, how's it going?
Exactly.
I mean, that's crazy to think about, but that's like a actual thing that's going on. Crazy.
It is so true. It is an actual thing.
This is a funny comment from Bomber. Says, I go out when I leave. It's nighttime, unarmed and alone. Only have a knife in my bra. I record my walk in case anything happens to me. So whoever finds it will know what or who did it. That's funny. That's pretty brave. I gotta admit.
It's brave to go out there unarmed.
Yeah, I mean, at least she sounds like she has a knife. But like I said, just you never know out there. I always am of that opinion, as you just said. Yourself, just better to be equipped than just in case.
And like, I don't ever, if I go alone, I don't go on night hikes alone. I think that's a bad idea. So if I go, I'll stay by my car, but I'll still have like all my stuff with me. But I'll be by my car, just in case I need to get out of there fast in a hurry. So that's just what I do. But
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely night hikes. I'm not even brave enough to do that. I've done them a few times, and it's not the funnest experience because I think when you're alone, you're just so worried about protecting yourself that you're probably. I mean, any noise that you hear out there automatically kind of is suspect. So I think when you're with another person, there's a little bit, at least for me personally, there's more of a reassurance where I can focus on like what I'm hearing and be a little bit more relaxed, that I have at least somebody there, and if something were to happen, God forbid, would be able to, figure out what's happening.
Yeah, I'll do hikes with other people, not alone. Like you're not ever going to get me. I mean, maybe one day when I get more confident, being in the field like that, or at night especially. But until then, I'm just kind of like, I want to play it safe.
Right.
Don't want to do anything risking my life.
Oh yeah, for sure. But as a filmmaker, how does that do you use that perspective at all when dealing with the subject, or is that just something that comes part of it for you and how you research?
I think doing the film aspect of it is because of the Bigfoot stuff. I like doing film and stuff like that, but it doesn't really go. Not really, to be quite honest. But it's just, I don't know. I like doing film just as much as I like researching Bigfoot. And I think I've learned a lot doing film because of researching Bigfoot. And
right.
So it's been a lot of fun because I'm learning these things from like some of the Bluff Creek guys. Rowdy Kelly, he was like involved in making like TV like commercials and stuff, and he's worked on movies and stuff like that. So I've learned a lot from him. So I mean, I guess like I don't know. That's a really bad answer, but yeah.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, it's definitely, it's nice to learn from other people who have been out there as well, and it's a cool project either way. And I think people should check out their YouTube channel, Bluff Creek Project, for sure, and check out your podcast. And do you want to just tell people where they might be able to find your show and everything and check you out?
Yeah, you can go on Instagram. It's all one word, Bluff Creek Project Podcast. And then our Bluff Creek Instagram is just Bluff Creek Project. Those are the two Instagram ones that we have. And then Facebook is Bluff Creek Project on Facebook. And then our website, I think it would be bluffcreekprojectblogspot.com.
Cool. I think I put a link in the description to the podcast or something I found online when I looked it up, and you'll find it there either way. I'll post it in the link below if that's not the right one, but I think it was. I posted it like a few days ago, so I think that should be the right one. I mean,
yeah, I'm pretty sure it is too.
Cool. Yeah, man. Well, appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Definitely keep up the good work. And like you said, you were hoping to go back this summer. Any other plans for research, Bigfoot around the country, or just Bluff Creek? Anything else going on coming up?
I'm in the process of trying to get like another film documentary going. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to Portland, Oregon in October through the 31st through the 4th. So I might do some interview with Cliff and Melissa. And,
oh, very cool.
That's going to be the start of it. So we'll see. It's going to probably be at least half a year until this is all done or more.
That's awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. I want to get out to Oregon. I've never actually been out that way. Really want to go to Cliff's Museum and just check out some of the spots out there. So have to try that out sometime. But yeah, it should be fun. And yeah, definitely would love to check out the film site sometime too. So I'll have to hit you up if I'm ever out that way and can't find my way around.
For sure. And if I'm not there by the time when you go up there, I'll ask Rowdy or Robert or somebody. I'm sure somebody will take you up there and show you around. So there's guys, they live up there and they go up there religiously. So
that's awesome. Yeah, cool. When you're in the area like that. Well, if you see any skunk apes down there in Florida, be sure to let us know.
Totally, for sure.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys all for your comments and questions. Awesome, as always, to see all the engagement. Again, if you guys are interested in this kind of content, please, or somebody who might be interested, please share it, subscribe, leave a comment, like the video, and we appreciate it as always. Next week, as I mentioned, Shane Corson of the Olympic Project will be on, fingers crossed, fires and stuff aside. So that should be a great time. And we have some great shows coming up for the rest of October as well, getting into some of the spooky season, which is fun. So thanks again, everybody. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week. And thank you, Tate.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, guys.